While K-dramas and K-pop dominate global charts and American fans flood comment sections with hearts, just across the DMZ, young North Koreans risk their lives for the simple act of saying what they really think. One former youth league official lived inside that silence until a single act of kindness from a stranger showed him what was missing. This is his story of crossing from fear into freedom. Bridge the gap. Subscribe to connect with stories from the other side of the DMZ. Now let's begin today's story. This is how it all began. I was born in Cheongam District, Cheongjin City, North Hamgyong Province. Cheongjin was a port town. Growing up by the sea, I used to race down to the docks with the other kids whenever the pollock boats came in. Back then, one fish was enough to make an entire family smile that night. I still remember the day I joined the youth league. I was 17. Standing on the platform with a red scarf around my neck, my chest burned with something I believed was pride. We were all raised that way, taught that the nation was everything and the supreme leader was our future. I worked hard. I took the most detailed notes in every ideology class, raised my hand more than anyone else. That diligence got me placed in the Cheongjin City Committee of the Youth League right after graduation. A few years later, I was promoted to a senior position on the Central Committee's ideology education team, compiling reports on Youth League members nationwide. When I first took the job, I assumed the reports were just numbers, attendance rates, study scores, event participation, nothing more. Then one word started appearing more and more often between the lines: indifference. At first, it was just a line or two a note that young people in certain regions seemed apathetic toward their studies. I didn't think much of it. I filed the reports away. But the word kept coming back. Month after month, it showed up more. Around the time that single word started haunting me, one person made the truth impossible to ignore. His name was Park Chul-soo, a colleague hired the same year as me, working the same ideology desk. He was diligent, well-liked, close with the young people he managed. He was also my closest friend. Then one day in a routine meeting, he said something small. Maybe young people have lost interest in the lessons because the material feels so disconnected from real life. That was all. A simple, honest opinion offered in good faith. 3 days later, the secret police came for him. People talk about how hard life was during the Korean War, during the IMF crisis. But even then, our parents weren't dragged away for speaking honestly. That day, I watched Chul-soo being led down the hallway. His face had gone white as paper. A week later, he came back, but he wasn't the same man. He stopped talking in meetings. He stopped meeting anyone's eyes. I finally caught him alone and asked what happened. He hesitated a long time before answering, his voice barely above a whisper. Min-hyuk, never say anything like that again. Don't even think it. Just do exactly what they tell you. A chill ran down my spine. A man who had spent his entire life playing by the rules had been broken by one honest sentence. I couldn't believe it. After that, I went back through the reports. I needed to understand what indifference really meant. And slowly it became clear that word wasn't apathy. It was fear sitting on top of doubt, young people too afraid to speak, but no longer convinced of what they'd been told. That night I couldn't sleep. My mother had made dinner, but I barely touched it. My younger sister noticed and asked what was wrong. Nothing, I told her. But something inside me had already started to crack. The first real question I'd ever asked about everything I'd been raised to believe. It started that quietly. After what happened to Chul-soo, I dreaded going to work. Every hallway felt like someone was watching. Life in Cheongjin was getting harder by the month. Rice prices in the market had nearly doubled. Rations existed mostly on paper. My family wasn't spared. My father had once run a factory, but the factory had been shut down for years, and there was no work left for him. My mother sold corn and tofu from a small stall in the market. At least you work for the central government, Min-hyuk. You're fine, my father would say sometimes. Every time he said it, something in me sank. My salary barely covered anything. It was my mother's market stall that kept our family fed. My sister, a low-ranking youth league member herself, came to me one day, careful with her words. There's a rumor going around. If you report someone for disloyalty, you get investigated too just for reporting them. So now everyone knows things and nobody says a word. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just a rumor. The entire reporting system was collapsing from the inside. Fear had silenced everyone, but underneath that silence, resentment was building. Not long after, a report came up from a regional youth league committee. 3 young people had been caught meeting at night, openly criticizing the regime. A few years earlier, that would have meant immediate punishment. But this report ended with a strange line: punishment of these individuals deferred. Given the number of similar cases, punishment risks broader unrest. There were too many young people breaking the rules to punish them all. I stared at that line for a long time. This wasn't a small crack anymore. The entire system had stopped functioning. That same night, I watched an elderly neighbor quietly hand my mother a bag of corn. "Take this. Everyone's struggling these days." That small act of kindness showed me something. In a crumbling system, people were holding each other up not because of the state, but in spite of it. They believed in each other, not the regime. But alongside that warmth, something else was growing in me, the sense that I couldn't stay another day longer. The breaking point came 2 months later. Word reached me that one of my sister's close friends in the local youth league was being investigated for improper remarks. All she'd said, among friends, was that life had gotten too hard. Someone reported it. My sister's voice shook when she told me, "I'm scared, Appa. What if I'm next?" In that moment, I knew I couldn't stay. The thought that my own sister might be in danger pushed me past the point of no return. That night, I worked up the courage to hint at it to my parents. I couldn't say it outright, but my father read it in my face. "Min-hyuk, what are you thinking?" I said nothing. He sat in silence for a long moment, then spoke quietly. "Whatever you've decided, I won't ask. Just you have to live. That's all that matters." It felt like permission. I nodded, fighting back tears. Over the following days, I quietly made arrangements. I reached out to a trader I knew, someone who'd long worked the border informally. I told him my situation. He answered in a few words, "Let me know when you're ready." I couldn't tell my sister beforehand. If she knew, she'd insist on coming with me, and that was far too dangerous. Leaving her behind was the hardest part. I told myself I'd find a way to bring her out once I was safely settled. The night before I left, my mother made one last dinner. She didn't say much, just kept piling more food onto my plate. When we finished eating, I took her hands in mine. "Mother, please take care of yourself." She held my hands back, fighting to keep the tears from falling. "You too. Just stay alive." Those few words were the strength I carried with me that night. The day I left, I walked out the door like it was any other work day. My bag held almost nothing, a change of clothes and a few corn cakes my mother had slipped in without telling me. I met my contact at the agreed spot, a middle-aged man in worn work clothes. "Ready?" "Ready." We waited for dark, then moved toward the Tumen River under cover of night. He knew the terrain like the back of his hand, guiding me around the blind spots of every checkpoint. We passed 2 guard posts along the way. Each time I held my breath and dropped flat to the ground. I'd spent my whole life behind a desk. Crawling through dark mountain terrain felt like nothing I'd ever known. After more than an hour of walking, I finally heard the sound of the Tumen River flowing somewhere in the darkness ahead. My guide whispered, "This is the narrowest stretch. Go now." I stepped into the water. Cold shot straight up through my ankles. Even in late spring, the river still carried the bite of winter. We were halfway across when a searchlight snapped on upstream. A bright beam swept the river, closing in fast. "Down, now." I dropped into the water, low enough that it lapped at my face. Cold water filled my mouth and nose. In that instant, my father's words came back to me. "You have to live." That single thought is what kept me there, holding still in the freezing current. The light swept past and faded. I slowly raised my head. Now we have to cross fast. I nearly swam the last stretch, and then finally my feet hit mud. I was standing on Chinese soil. I dropped to my knees right there. Not from exhaustion. For the first time in my life, I was bowing to something I'd never been allowed to value: freedom. We moved quickly away from the riverbank. When we reached the small farmhouse my guide had arranged, I finally let myself collapse, the tension draining out of me all at once. But the relief didn't last. My guide spoke again. "If a youth league cadre defects, the search won't look anything like a normal case. We need to move fast." A cold sweat broke over me. For the first time, I understood the full weight of who I'd been. We couldn't stay anywhere more than 2 days. We hid by day, moved only at night. A few days later, word came that strange men had shown up near the farmhouse we'd left 2 days earlier, asking questions around the village. 2 days. If they'd been faster, I'd have been caught right there. During one stretch of running, a middle-aged Korean Chinese woman took me in. She was a distant relative of my guide. "My mother came from there too," she said, hiding me in her home. "So this doesn't feel like someone else's trouble." She fed me a hot meal. After a lifetime of nothing but rationed, formal meals, that single bowl of soybean paste soup hit me somewhere deep. "Thank you." "Really? Don't thank me. We're the same blood." That one sentence made me forget just for a moment everything I'd been afraid of. After moving between several hiding places, I finally met a missionary who had spent years helping North Korean defectors. He listened to my story, his face turning serious. Your case carries real risk, but if the truth about what's happening inside the Youth League reaches the world, it could matter. I'll do everything I can. I took his hand. Thank you. I'll make it out alive and I'll tell people the truth. That same night, an urgent message came in. Strange men had been spotted closing in on the city. We move tonight. I'm activating the route to South Korea. As I packed, my sister's face kept surfacing in my mind. Leaving her behind weighed on me all over again. Following the route the missionary had arranged, we moved at night, crossing into Southeast Asia. After days of travel, our bus stopped at a checkpoint. The inspection was far more thorough than usual. A soldier took my ID and studied it for a long time. What's your occupation? Farm work. He glanced down at my hands. After a lifetime behind a desk, they were far too clean for a farmer's. His eyes sharpened. That's when the missionary's local contact stepped in, speaking fluently to the soldier and slipping him a small envelope. The soldier took it, handed back my ID, and waved us through. As the bus pulled away, I let out a breath I'd been holding. Every moment of the journey flashed through my mind at once. The night we reached the border city, a commotion broke out near our lodging. Local police were sweeping for illegal residents. I killed the lights and folded myself into a closet, holding my breath until it hurt. Long after the police left, I still didn't move. Finally, the innkeeper opened the door quietly. It's all right now. Only then did I let myself breathe. Days later, contact was finally made with the South Korean consulate. At the agreed meeting place, a consulate official spoke to me quiet but certain. You've been through a lot. We'll take it from here. My knees gave out beneath me. A man who'd spent his entire life as a youth league cadre was now finally a protected citizen. A few days later, we boarded a flight to South Korea. As the plane lifted off, I looked out the window and watched the past few months play back the cold current of the Tumen River. My father's last words, the corn cakes my mother had packed, and the face of the sister I'd left behind. I made myself a promise. This is where it starts. I have to tell the world what I saw, what I heard. The first thing I did after setting foot in South Korea was look out the window of Hanawon, the government's resettlement center for North Korean defectors, cars filling the streets, buildings lit up at night, people walking freely, going wherever they pleased. That was all it was. But to me, that ordinary scene was more overwhelming than anything I'd witnessed. I stood for a long time in front of a 24-hour convenience store. Being able to walk in and buy whatever I wanted with no one watching, no one judging, that hit me harder than any revolution could have. After resettling, I sat through several interviews with South Korean intelligence officials. I told them everything the loyalty reports inside the Youth League, the cracks spreading among young people, what happened to Chulsu. Everything I knew I laid out on the table. The officer barely spoke during our sessions. He mostly just took notes. Near the end, he finally said something. This is the first time we've gotten testimony this detailed from inside the younger generation. I nodded. For the first time in my life, I'd done something for the truth, not for the system I'd once served. Through all of it, every night, I thought about the sister I'd left behind, whether she'd suffered for what I'd done. Through the missionary, word eventually reached me that she was safe. Only then could I finally breathe easy. I can tell you this now, with complete certainty, loyalty inside the Youth League is already breaking down. The day young people stop staying silent isn't far off. Today I live under a new name, building a new life. I had to start from nothing. But every morning I wake up without fear. I understand now that's worth more than any power I ever held. There's one last thing I want to say. I spent my whole life inside that system, believing in it completely. And from the inside, I watched closer than almost anyone as the loyalty of an entire generation quietly fell apart. For my sister, still there, and for every young person her age who deserves to know freedom one day, I'll spend the rest of my life working toward that. Unification will come. Please wait for that day with us. If you stayed with this story until the end, leave a comment and let us know you were here. This video is a fictional dramatization created with AI assistance, based on real testimonies from North Korean defectors, intended to move and inform our viewers. All characters, place names, and events depicted are fictional and do not represent real individuals or actual events. Thank you for watching.